Hi there, everybody. Two things before we start. One, the name change. I'm going by Patricia now. Patricia Taxxon, Patty for short. And this is because I'm trans, and I'm gonna spend the next couple of years becoming a lady. It's gonna be a long and humiliating journey, and I hope you're all ready to have it with me. Thanks. And the second thing is that while I was first formulating my ideas for this video, Rags started using this intro where he's got his little doggy character doing a jig to a pogo track, and I thought I cannot do a video about this puppy without one-upping this somehow. So I took it upon myself, and I hired a character designer, 18 plus, and an animator, and I got him to join forces to create a minute-long animated segment set to music that I wrote, that samples both We're Back a Dinosaur Story and Rite of Spring. And this is that. I just wanted to shout out my lovely artist collaborators. Here we go.
1 minute, then I'll do the thing. Wake up and spill the tea. I know with this specimen I'll play through easily. Get up and sing. If you have a story, let it ring. When class is over, all the world will see his fire and new subscribers coming in. In all the anger of the weeping earth, the devil hovers aloft. Spare my old weary eyes, terraform to another report. I see the darkness falling onto us. Find someone to carry the load. And once that sick load's been lifted off, I call you aboard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like a mountaineer before the mountain peaks, I do this every day, he says, before the earth beneath him quakes. Beneath the padded layers is a message to be taught, and if you got something to say, then come and say it to my fucking paws.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Welcome to the gun show.
You got to get a good girl. I am not your man. If you can't see this girl, how could you understand? You got to get a
Rags is the name of a YouTube channel with a good 300,000 subscribers, and the pseudonym of the dog who runs it. I've been thinking for a long time about how exactly to talk about him. For a while, I swore off making any kind of response video to him, just on principle, but now I may have figured something out. Just to get things out of the way, I'd like to say without any ambiguity that out of everyone creating content on this platform, Rags is the one that I genuinely have the least respect for. Rags is consistently dishonest in ways that other people of similar mindset and work never seem to be. He represents the absolute worst form of bigotry by way of non-committal intellectual cowardice. And he has the audacity to do all of this while refusing to be entertaining.
Alright, let's go through some sword boys.
What? You can't just assume people's gender, Riley.
Rags is also, basically, impossible to talk about, at least in any comprehensive fashion within a video response. His content is, seemingly by design, resistant to the format. Some people have tried to formulate rebuttals to his ideas, but their videos end up as meandering and without focus as the source material. If I'm gonna discuss this guy, I'll have to take a different approach if I'd like my arguments to actually be consumable for the average person. So first, let's talk about Rags' politics. This is actually a more complicated subject than it might seem. I'm going to pick out a particular video of his to try and explain why. This is Adam Ruins Everything is Wrong About Gamers, where he responds to an excerpt of, as expected, Adam Ruins Everything, called Why People Think Video Games Are Just for Boys.
Early video games like Pong were totally unisex.
Which is neither good nor bad.
It's worth mentioning that this video is over 2 years old. I'm aware that it's seen by some as taboo to make response videos to old content, since going after stuff that's likely to be more poorly argued is seen as kind of a cop-out, but I would posit that if Rags believes this video to be out of date or not very well researched, he can leave a disclaimer as a pinned comment or perhaps even make some kind of follow-up vlog. You know, some kind of easily accessible signifier that this content is no longer an accurate representation of the creator's views. The Adam Ruins Everything episode being responded to is, by all accounts, quite simple. Adam explains that video games were first conceived as genderless electronic products, and it was only after the video game crash of the 1980s that game companies had to pivot to marketing themselves as entertainment for young boys. And that's part of why it's seen as a boys' club today. That's it. Now, I'd like to point your attention to this one part of Rags' response, because, as I said, I won't be responding to the entirety of any singular video of his. It's the part where he responds to Adam's brief clip show of aggressively masculine video game ads for, 7 minutes.
Other brands soon followed suit.
Introducing Game Gear from Sega that separates the men from the boys.
Yeah, I know you included that clip for a reason, because you wanted to, I don't know, maybe make it seem like it was bad for them to say, well, boys want to be men. Well, newsflash, boys do want to be men. Okay? A boy wants to be a man. Of course they're going to say it separates the men from the boys. It's part of the colloquial slang now.
Okay, do you notice how, despite several sounds coming out of the screen, absolutely no words were said here? Great, you've explained the reasoning behind the marketing, but that leaves you open to a pretty clear rebuttal.
And kept marketing to them as they grew up.
Wilt thou save the girl, or play like a girl? No one wants to play like a girl. What's one of the most common playground insults growing up? Well, back in my day. I say back in my day, I'm only 24. But people would always say, you kick a ball like a girl, you run like a girl, you hit like a girl. That wasn't a compliment.
Why? Why is this the way things are? And to follow up on that, is it a good thing that girlhood is seen so universally as being inherently weak that it can be used as shorthand for such? Rags never explicitly answers this question, so the only assumption I can make is that Rags is presenting this as just self-evidently good. Seemingly because it is governed by some kind of natural force that shouldn't be tampered with. He keeps on going, by the way.
Got this pulling a 360 stalefish.
Yeah, again, we're marketing to men here. Men like to do stunts in outdoor sports. They like to show off their finesse on the snowboard or on the skateboard or on the bike or whatever they're doing. And it's like a badge of honor to men, especially growing up, to get a scar doing something that you're proud of. Plus, a lot of chicks dig guys with scars.
It's not the size of your howitzer, it's what you do with it.
Well, yeah, of course they made a commercial that said that. It doesn't make any sense to say that to a girl. Because girls don't have penises.
Are you sure about that?
A few other interesting things happen in this video. After the never-ending response to Adam's ad clip show, Adam says this.
And after decades of this kind of advertising,
What's up, bitch?
we now think of video games as being the exclusive domain of the male sex.
And Rags, for one, interprets this completely literally, like he responds to the claim as if Adam posited that games are literally the exclusive domain of men, and there is a physical, uncomfortably biologically centric visual metaphor keeping women from entering.
First off, who is we, Adam? When you say we think of video games as exclusively male, who is we? Who is this we you are referring to? Because it's not me. It's not people I know. It's not gamers that I play with. Here you are showing 2 million, almost 200,000 people and going out there and you're telling them, yeah, gamers think that games aren't for girls. When that is patently, blatantly, and demonstrably untrue. How is it demonstrably untrue? Let me show you, Adam.
And Rags goes about disproving this by...
And so when I saw this video for the first time and you uttered these ridiculously, blatantly false words to 2.2 million people, the first thing that popped into my head was how quickly I would be able to disprove this with only the knowledge of being an actual gamer who lives on the inside and not from the outside looking in. So I asked everybody what they thought. Who are video games for? I asked them and got 2,850 responses.
Conducting a Twitter poll with his own audience, with a sample size of 2,000 people, being asked the question of whether video games are for a specific gender and only that gender or not. Now that's bulletproof scientific reasoning if I've ever seen. And the thing is, Rags has been rambling for much longer than I've shown. It's actually been a few minutes since Adam was last allowed to speak. I'm beginning to think that most viewers just forgot the actual argument that Rags is responding to. Like, it's pretty clear when watching Adam Ruins Everything in its tightly edited form that Adam is speaking of general systemic trends, and the exclusively part was an exaggeration, but seeing it gutted and spit out in this way honestly makes it harder to follow. Now, what's even more interesting is the argument that comes after. The next segment of the Adam piece claims that the gender demographics of those that play video games is greatly skewed in public perception, and more non-men play games than is commonly thought.
Boys just like video games more than girls do.
Sorry, Jake, that's a straight up myth.
No, Adam, you're wrong again. Holy shit.
And Rags just, immediately goes on a stock gamer rant about how mobile games don't count and women are actually overrepresented as a group within gaming. This makes up most of the latter half of the video, and yes, he does eventually make the biological essentialist argument for why most gamers are dudes.
So the marketing towards boys can be seen here. Boys like video games more. They are more likely to get them and play them and buy them. There is nothing keeping a girl from doing it. Boys just like it more, just like how girls like ponies and dresses more. Especially as youths, boys and girls just like different things. It's not bad, it's just the difference between the genders.
And it seems that again, what can be explained by unseen forces is inherently righteous. But hold on, isn't that a contradiction? Well, yeah. When Rags thinks that Adam is arguing the position that video games exclude women, he responds with a Twitter poll that shows gaming is actually for everyone. But when Adam then argues that the female demographic is larger than commonly thought, it's suddenly, but don't you know about the gamer gene? In conclusion, this video is a mess. However, I can't really blame him, considering the way he puts his videos together. If you didn't know, he actually does this stuff in real time. He watches a bit of a thing and records his response to it, essentially live, before moving on to the next bit. You might also know this as the method that I used before my videos became watchable, so I have a bit of experience in this field. One trick that's easy when you make videos with this method is pausing your commentary to comment on some background element that you have playing live as you speak. I used to do this all the time before I realized the magic of writing scripts beforehand, and Rags does it occasionally too.
It is also important to note that Dean has just finished the tutorial in the background. All of what you saw, that was the tutorial. Things do not go uphill from here. It's one of the reasons that walking simulators only cater to a certain audience, because some people just want to be grabbed. Step into the dojo, Winston.
Oh, and also there's a reference to Andy Warhol in this song. It's a fine gag, it's kind of like a video essay fourth wall break, but it also kinda exposes that you're essentially writing, recording, and editing your essay simultaneously. Although, I have some reason to believe that Rags may not do his videos like this anymore. For one, he never comments on his gameplay footage in recent videos, and Rags doesn't strike me as the kind of person who'd be able to resist interjecting his commentary with quips about the sick headshot he just got on screen, if given the chance. And for two, Rags' upload rate has dropped to one video every 3 months, so he might actually be spending time on them now. With that in mind, let's make another stop on the Rags experience. Another minor video, this time a bit newer. It's called YouTube Belongs to Me. This is in reference to the video's subject, seen in the thumbnail, Riley J. Dennis, who has done nothing wrong. And again, let's first look at the original piece that Rags is responding to. It's mainly about Riley's experience with YouTube harassment and her ideas for site features that could be implemented in order to reduce it.
Because right now, YouTube has a problem. It's become a breeding ground for far-right response channels that literally just make videos in response to other people's content. It's a really good way to get views by leeching off of other people's work and getting your audience super mad about it. YouTube, whether intentionally or not, has allowed this community to flourish for a long time. Their algorithms and ways of promoting videos have bolstered these channels without providing any protections for the channels they're attacking. And I think that needs to change. Otherwise, YouTube is going to be overrun by hateful response channels, and they'll scare away all the marginalized people who used to find solace in this platform.
Now, she brings up a lot of ideas, and Rags gives a 40-minute response to it, but I'd like to first focus on just one sentence from Riley's video.
So obviously, I want YouTube to be better. I don't think they can completely eliminate harassment and abuse, but I think they can greatly reduce it without affecting anyone's freedom of speech.
Let's just put a pin in that for now. Alright, so Rags starts off with a faster-than-light rebuttal to Riley saying that she does in fact receive harassment.
Hey everybody, so if you don't know, I've gotten a lot of harassment and abuse because of my YouTube channel.
Welcome to the internet, Riley. It's not an excuse, it's an explanation. A wee tiny tad of self-reflection can go a long way, Riley.
And proceeds to spend the next 3 minutes gaffing about how incompetent Riley is, presumably as some kind of forward.
But Riley, have you ever gone to your videos tab and looked at some of the shit that you say? How to plan a trans-inclusive event? The problem with only supporting legal immigration? Why voter ID laws are unconstitutional? Not all violence is created equal? The it's okay to punch Nazis video? Not dating bisexual people is biphobic? Poor people deserve nice things too, because, yeah, give them lobster, why not? Why would a queer person support Muslims? Because Islam didn't do nothing. Trans women are not biologically male because biological sex is a social construct. Man, your channel is a trip, Riley. Can you imagine why maybe some people don't like being called bigots and transphobic and sexist and horrible, awful people? And how maybe if you sling shit, you have to expect some to be slung back at you?
Cool. I guess you could say my video opens in a pretty similar fashion. Although I'm a bit annoyed with Rags drawing a false equivalence between Riley making videos about bigotry and targeted harassment at Riley in particular. Like, she very rarely calls any individual person a bigot, which means there aren't many people who can say they've received harassment by her hand, so the comparison doesn't make all that much sense. This entire section feels like it's just here to sell Riley as this evil person before the video has even started. And that's because it is.
So if you don't know, I've gotten a lot of harassment and abuse because of my YouTube channel. And YouTube itself has done nothing to try and prevent that.
Because, Riley, you can't go around calling hundreds of thousands of people bigots, sexists, and racists because, well, quite frankly, for any reason at all, and not expect to get a lot of negative responses from that. You can't stir the shit and be surprised when other people do the same to you. They cry out in pain as they strike you, such as Riley J. Dennis. Response videos are not harassment. People criticizing you are not harassment. You're one of the most vile and hateful channels on the entire website, and you deserve every bit of criticism that you receive. Obviously, there are lines that shouldn't be crossed, but something tells me you don't have a problem at all using fringe examples of something to regulate the entire group. Let's be frank, Riley. The point of this video is you bitching because you want people who disagree with you to be gone.
Hey Rags, she hasn't said anything yet. Anyways, we've reached the pin we left earlier.
Obviously, I want YouTube to be better. I don't think they can completely eliminate harassment and abuse, but I think they can greatly reduce it without affecting anyone's freedom of speech.
Yeah, spoken like a true authoritarian. Oh, and let's get this out of the way now. Yes, I understand that freedom of speech only applies to the government, yada yada. But we're talking about the spirit of free speech, the principle of free speech. But YouTube cannot infringe upon your rights to free speech. Thank you. Yes, we know.
Now, you may have noticed that Rags doesn't seem to care about what she said here. He gives it a passing remark, like he's letting the audience know he's still here or something, and then goes on a short rant about the spirit of freedom of speech, which seems entirely disconnected. It's like he's using Riley's video as background noise that he begrudgingly has to play through in order to get to the part he's interested in. You don't have to respond to the whole video, Rags. You can just... But I care a bit more about this particular bit than Rags does. See, Rags spends the rest of this video pretending that this sentence, Riley saying she doesn't believe YouTube could possibly eliminate all harassment but could only reduce it, just doesn't exist. He legitimately spends the rest of this video pretending as if Riley is presenting her plan to completely eradicate all cyberbullying. Like, let's look at this clip later in the video.
Currently, YouTuber A can block YouTuber B, but all that does is prevent B from commenting on A's videos. It doesn't do anything else, and I think it can do a lot more. On other social media sites, blocking has a ton more functionality, so I'm not asking for anything that's really out there. I'm just asking for YouTube to be a little bit more like other social media networks. And at its base, YouTube basically is a video-based social network. You follow people, you have your own profile, you comment on people's stuff, etc, etc.
By blocking someone on YouTube, they can no longer leave comments on your channel. What more do you propose it should do? Are you saying that the videos that you make should not even be able to be viewed by me if you block me? You know this won't actually make it impossible for me to make responses to you, much how people regularly respond to those they've blocked on sites like Twitter.
Yeah, nice. You know how incognito mode works. However, Riley never said she was presenting a foolproof system to end harassment. Only one that would inconvenience and roadblock harassers to the degree that a significant amount would be dissuaded from doing so. Now you might be thinking, how in the hell did Rags get away with this? He plays the clip of Riley contradicting what he's saying within his video. Well, things get a bit clearer when you look at the play bar and realize that the statement I'm referring to was around 12 minutes ago. And if you remember, it was blown off and forgotten immediately. As it turns out, Rags just doesn't have a problem with lying to your face as long as the context is too brief and far back to remember. An arguably even more egregious example of misrepresentation happens pretty close to this. Here is an unedited clip from Riley's video.
To be completely honest, I would be happy to see all of these harassment-based hate-mongering channels get banned completely. But unfortunately, I think that's unrealistic. So these steps are things that don't silence them or prevent them from making their videos. All it does is try to protect the creators that they're targeting. I don't think that's too much to ask for.
Okay, Riley would like to see hateful channels be banned from the site, but as she believes this won't be happening, she's presenting potential goals that don't involve outright deplatforming. That was like a couple seconds worth of words there. What does Rags say to this?
To be completely honest, I would be happy to see all of these harassment-based hate-mongering channels get banned completely.
Yep, there we go. People who disagree with me, people who make response videos to me, people who criticize me, their channels should be banned. Their livelihoods dismantled. All the work, all the effort, all of the blood, sweat, and tears that they put into formulating arguments.
Why are you like this? Stop it! Rags! No! Rags actually doesn't let Riley finish that thought for another 4 minutes. He gives a grand speech about how she's an authoritarian of the modern age because she wants to ban channels that she disagrees with, but let her finish, my dude. Well, after exactly one eternity has passed, Riley finally gets the chance to continue.
Unfortunately, I think that's unrealistic. So these steps are things that don't silence them or prevent them from making their videos. All it does is try to protect the creators that they're targeting. I don't think that's too much to ask for.
Honestly, I think giving YouTube even more tools and abilities to try and control people's channels and moderate them would be a terrible idea, especially considered about how they have created so much pain and misery for content creators with the demonetization issue and all the other algorithms associated with channel growth. YouTube is either incompetent or ideologically motivated. And either way, the less power they have, the better.
And Rags seems to just not notice the contradiction here. He spent 4 minutes ranting about how Riley wants him and his buds to be deplatformed, and when she finally gets the chance to clarify that's not what she's arguing, Rags just says, well, that would be bad too, I guess. Alright, so as a hypothetical, imagine if I was arguing to you that the length of time before artistic works enter the public domain is too long and it should be shortened. It wouldn't be a sound rebuttal if you just pointed out that I actually want copyright to be abolished completely. This is regardless of the fact that I actually do believe that. Copyright should be abolished, and I made 2 videos about it. Rags is doing the same thing here. For the rest of the video, Rags tackles each of Riley's feature proposals by framing it through a similar kind of false lens. Riley said that ideally, these harassment-based channels would be banned completely. Therefore, the ability to block other accounts from showing on your recommended bar is an act of censorship. According to Rags, this is just part of Riley's grand plan to ban all the harassment channels, somehow. Rags is taking the most extreme version of Riley's argument and using it as an excuse to refuse engagement with the moderate version that she's actually presenting and elaborating upon.
If you block a YouTuber, their videos should not appear in the sidebar next to any of your videos. It's that simple.
That definitely won't be abused, Riley. All in all, this sounds like one big watch me and accept what I say, but don't you dare try to find videos that people disagree with me on. I bet you, Riley, have a whole lot of names on that naughty list of yours. So if YouTube ever does something like this, you can go through all those names and put them down on your block list, and that way you'll make sure that you can mitigate as best you can the ability for people to ever find the responses to your channel.
I got a lot of comments on my Dishonored Wolf response talking about how I left out too much context, despite the video being in response to a premise rather than in response to every argument serving that premise. Forced diversity still isn't real. Wolf is attributing causation where there is none, and I don't need to refute Wolf's opinion on Star Wars to show that. I've now seen every response to my response, including those by Wolf himself, and I've yet to be given a working definition of forced diversity that doesn't break under the slightest scrutiny. The causative link between superficial casting choices and overall quality of the work has failed to prove itself in any way. 13 minutes was all I needed. I bring this up because I can't help but think that what Rags is doing, is what these people wish I was doing with my response videos. And, no thanks. I hope now it's clear that you can be just as dishonest and misleading while still playing someone's entire video inside your video. And it's pretty boring to watch as well. But I have to say, this also makes me feel pretty confident, because as far as I can tell, Rags and his ilk are exclusively capable of responding to their dissenters in ways that are unwatchable to anyone who doesn't already agree with them. I could say anything, and they wouldn't be able to convince anyone who doesn't already hate me that I'm wrong. That's nice. Anyways, the rest of this video is very bad. If you were planning on watching the videos I talk about for context, this is the one that I would most recommend skipping if you already had a bad day. For both of our sakes, I'm going to look at just one more clip from this.
Also, I want to point out that misgendering trans people should 100% be considered inciting hatred against them on the basis of their gender. The only purpose in misgendering trans people is that it hurts them and incites hatred against them.
Riley, a lot of people are going to look at you and say, hey, it's a guy because you look like a guy. You have the body of a guy. You have the voice of a guy. The DNA in every single cell of your body is male. You can call yourself whatever you want, I don't care. But once you start telling other people that they have to call you certain things, that is obviously where they draw the line.
Alright, so to his credit, Rags has never personally misgendered Riley J. Dennis. Seemingly on principle, he will always refer to Riley using she/her pronouns. This is more than can be asked of his comments section, but what he's done in this particular clip is give his entire audience an intellectual justification for the intentional misgendering of a trans woman, at the tail end of a long string of insults and insinuation that she is vile and dishonest to such a degree that any criticism she receives is simply to be expected. I, quite frankly, don't think Rags belongs on YouTube.
But can you say trans rights, though, before you leave? Unironically, no memes. Can you say trans rights?
Trans rights.
Let's look at one more video. This is a real new one. It's called the EA Inclusion Survey, and rather than being a response to a video, it's a response to a Medium article.
I recently led a research study that aims to better understand what players think about representation, diversity, and inclusion in gaming. Instead of just fucking going to YouTube?
This article being responded to is, shockingly simple. It's just the results of a survey. It's a survey that was sent out to gamers living in the US in May of 2018. It included questions such as how highly players value diversity and accessibility in games, what things could be done to improve experiences in multiplayer titles, that kind of thing. It's open about which demographics were asked, how each question was framed, and shows everything in nice-looking graphs. You might be thinking, how do you rebuke an article that's just the results of a survey, let alone for an entire hour? Well, as it turns out, Rags has found a way, but we'll have to watch and examine what he's come up with in order to see. So, Figure A. Rags says he's skeptical of the article because it was written by an employee of EA.
To the guy in the baseball cap, my 11-year-old self was too shy to mention, but thank you for being one of the reasons why I'm a huge gamer today. Yeah, imagine you're that guy and you read this, and you realize that what you did, ending up leading this chick to becoming a part of Electronic Arts, the galactic empire of video games, I bet you'd feel very proud. And, I mean, that's assuming this happened, and I don't think it did, because I don't believe the suits who work at EA. rule of thumb, anything that EA says is a lie until proven otherwise. You think you walk in for the job interview at Electronic Arts and they're like, yeah, how honest are you?
Right. So the claim here is that EA is a bad company, therefore, all of its employees are compulsive liars, which is why their writings can't be trusted. Rags, that's not an argument. That's headcanon, a fan theory. You're making a baseless accusation which can be neither proven nor falsified. You've spun me a web of nothing. Figure B. Rags thinks there aren't enough people in the survey.
The findings outlined below are from an online survey sent out to US gamers in May of 2018. 2,252 individuals took the survey, ranging from 13 to 54 years old, who own and play video games on console or PC, and who are decision makers in entertainment purchases. Wow, alright, well, like me, you're probably thinking, gosh, 2,252 people, that's not a lot of people at all. Especially when we're trying to extrapolate this kind of survey to gamers as a whole.
So the claim here is that the survey can't be considered reflective of gamers as a whole. This is because the poll didn't have enough people. Now, even though the article states that the survey cast a wide net in order to represent as many demographics as possible, Rags is unsatisfied. See, it isn't like a granular thing, where a small yet representative chunk of people could give results that can be extrapolated to a larger but still equally proportioned group. Obviously, EA has some sort of ulterior motive with this, and you can tell because...
But that is an extremely tiny amount to then extrapolate to all gamers. And I'll wager my immaculately maintained asshole that if Electronic Arts' survey came back and, it turns out they don't give a shit about inclusion at all, it turns out that they don't really like it, there's no way they'd publish this.
Rags, again, this is your goddamn headcanon. You don't know any of this. You can't prove it, and I can't falsify it. So what's it here for? Why are you wasting your breath? Figure C actually comes directly after this. Rags notices that the survey included gamers that are 13 to 16 years old.
And what is up with his age range? 13 years old? Who owns and plays games on console and PC, and who are decision makers in entertainment purchases? I mean, look, no offense to the 13-year-olds who might be watching this video, or the 14-year-olds, or the 15-year-olds, but, man, like... I don't care about your opinion if you're 13 years old. I mean, people who are 13 are not exactly renowned for their incredible decision-making capabilities. And I feel like the way that this survey is framed, no wonder they had no issue giving this survey to a 13, a 14, 15, 16-year-old, basically kids, who, by and large, probably won't be able to really think through a lot of this stuff, or whose experiences are kind of colored by their age.
Now, if I heard correctly, the claim here is that EA has maliciously expanded the age range of their survey to younger teenagers with the intention of skewing the results. People aged 13, 14, 15, and 16, skewing the results of a survey that included ages 13 to 54. Now, for one, 13-year-olds have opinions on art that, a corporation would be interested in hearing to market to them better. But also, it's less than 10% of the age range. Rags, you
fucking hell, what the fuck am I doing?
And for that matter, what is this even for, Rags? Who benefits from making people think gamers want inclusivity more than they really do? Well, if we watch a little more of this video, we can hear his answer.
Anyway, this part wraps up by saying, when asked if they would play a game with features such as customization for females and diverse ethnic backgrounds, diverse storytelling from different perspectives, and accessibility to those with special needs, roughly 45% of players report being even more likely to play that game. Now, this is a survey by Electronic Arts, and I seem to remember that not too long ago, they had a particular game come out by the name of Battlefield 5, and that game was a fantastic example of inclusion done just horribly, horribly wrong. Gamers were chastised and mocked and insulted by the devs and EA themselves because, hey, if you don't think that a face paint wearing disabled cyborg women fought on the British front lines in World War II, then you just need to fucking educate yourself. Well, instead of educating myself, I spent my money elsewhere, and it turns out that I wasn't the only one. EA's flagship for inclusion took a huge hit, definitely a low point for the series, The game is the first Battlefield game to miss the NPD's top 10 this decade. The internet is full of the news about just how poorly the game sold compared to other Battlefield games. How very strange it is that this survey would release shortly after the news of the disappointing Battlefield sales had sat in the public eye, almost as if they're trying to really push the narrative, despite all reality, that inclusion sells video games. Almost as if they're trying to save face?
Alright, I think that's enough examples to establish the first pattern. Rags just makes shit up. He pulls reasons to distrust the results of this survey out of his ass. He has similar non-arguments for just about every section of it. Another big chunk of this video's length is comprised of Rags just asking questions of the survey that he could just find out himself if he did some research. Like here.
Alrighty, this last one's a bit odd to see here. Offering features that allow those with special needs to play. So you mean disabled people? Mentally handicapped people? I can't say retard on YouTube anymore. Do you really want every game to be so accessible that a mentally handicapped person can beat it? What about multiplayer games? How would you even go about doing that? Even in terms of a single player game, should games that are known for their challenge and difficulty all be dumbed down to accommodate the least capable among us? Mainly, should the creators of games fear the social justice outrage mob coming for them if their vision is for a game that's difficult and that it's not deemed inclusive enough?
And as it turns out, you'll be pleased to hear, we've already figured out how to simultaneously impose an intended level of difficulty while also giving players a way to circumvent these factors for an experience that suits them. Celeste is a rock-hard 2D platformer that features a robust set of accessibility options. It's essentially a debug mode that they let players use. This counterintuitively enforces a particular designer-curated experience more so than a normal difficulty selection would, because these accessibility options are presented transparently as being a separate custom experience that the player can make for themselves. Check out this video of a severely visually impaired player playing with the assist mode. He's actually having a pretty fun and difficult time, just for himself, you know? It's cool. Of course, what would then follow is a discussion over the degree to which developers are responsible for including these kinds of accessibility features, and maybe you have an answer to this. But I'm pretty sure that whatever you'd say in response would be more substantive than your current method of just confusedly shouting ableist slurs into the microphone. And as it always is with Rags, the ever-present appeal to the authority of the status quo also makes several appearances here. There's a part later in the video where Rags looks at a graph of all the most popular reasons that those asked aren't more interested in video games as a general hobby than they already are.
I've said it before and I'll say it again, I don't really give a shit what non-gamers think about gaming. In the same way that professional bowlers probably don't really care about my opinion on bowling. So if somebody who isn't really into gaming and doesn't like or enjoy video games tells me that I don't like it because they're unfriendly player community, or it's too difficult, or I'm not confident in my skills, or there's too many buttons on the controller. Okay, then go play a hobby that you enjoy. Don't try and fuck around with my shit because you don't like it.
This is, again, circular reasoning. Rags doesn't think developers should be making efforts to be more inclusive or accessible because that's the way it is, and is therefore the way it should be. You understand that's where the argument ultimately ends up, right? It's not for everybody, therefore it should be for no more people. You can use that to justify anything. And then immediately after this, Rags takes a look at a graph that shows that while female gamers are equally proportioned with men while playing with friends and family, they are underrepresented by a long shot when playing online with strangers, and...
Well, it looks like men and women equally like to play with friends and family in person. I'm assuming this is couch co-op or hot seat or split screen. You guys remember Hot Seat, right? Oh man, Worms World Party, Civilization 4, those were the days! Anyway, once we move online to a more competitive and less personal space like online gaming, the differences become obvious. They like to play online less, they like to play with strangers less, and they like to play in a real team of players less. And that makes sense to me. In fact, I think it would be very unusual if the opposite results were reported. Women generally, and holy fuck, I literally don't care about, well, my little niece Nancy sure does love to play volleyball. I don't care about your anecdotal example. So don't even make it. Individual outliers do not disprove generalities. The general trend seems to be that women are less interested in competition in competitive environments and risk-taking in general.
He makes the gamer gene argument again. Okay, I guess I have to explain why this isn't a satisfactory thing to say. Like, you might respond by saying, oh, I'm not saying that women have a physiological trait that makes them less likely to play competitive multiplayer games, that's just the choice they make. But if you don't go on to explain why these choices are being made and simply describe it as self-evident that this is the natural order of things, you've just made a physiological argument with extra steps. This discussion is and has always been centered around why individual choices people make still turn up with seemingly systemic imbalances. If you don't go that extra step, then you might as well be arguing for the existence of a gamer gene. This bigotry by way of non-argumentation just keeps on showing up all across Rags' channel. Like here, where he rebuts someone pointing out that most games have white protagonists, which is true, by saying that things are fine the way they are because we're in a meritocracy and it's just to be expected.
According to a landmark 2009 study, 85% of game characters are white.
What survey? There's no link in the description to it. I'd like to take a look and see if these numbers have any bias or leaning or try to draw conjecture based on the information that they have, but I guess you're just not going to show us the information. But it's clear to you that things being 85% white in this one bit of media bothers you. So, I'm curious, what percentage is acceptable, Jamin? What percentage of people in media should be white? Can you give me a number? Do you have one? Do you understand the implications of having percentage quotas? Would you not know what a meritocracy was if it bit you on the ass?
This leaves less than 15% of the video game universe for blacks, Asians, Hispanics, Indians, Native Americans, and mixed-race people.
Jamin? Look, this might sound really awful to you to hear, but you're gonna have to listen anyway if you ever see this video. Black people, Latinos, Asians, Native Americans, whatever, nobody is owed a spot on these places because of their skin color. Because if they were, that would be racist. But this isn't malicious discrimination, just like white people aren't being maliciously discriminated against in the NBA. Nothing is keeping these people out, nothing is preventing these people out, nothing is preventing you from succeeding in being in the media. You want more than 15% representation by minorities. I want whatever percentage a meritocracy reflects. That's why I'm not going to give you a number. That's why I'm not going to say a certain percentage is too much, or a certain percentage is too little, or we have to, adopt the soft bigotry of low expectations to prop up people of certain races based on their skin color. Because I think they're just as capable.
And wanting a meritocracy isn't inherently racist when taken in a vacuum. Like, it's wrong, but that's a different topic. It's pointing to the current state of racial media representation and deeming it self-justified under the pretense that we are already living in a meritocracy that is racist. Rags is being racist here.
I have been accused of being racist or transphobic or something, even though the artist who draws the images you're seeing now, she's not white, but whatever, I guess the truth is inconvenient, isn't it? It is a funny thing, they can never actually give me any examples, but that's what they've heard, so hey.
And I didn't even have to mention how eager he is to drop the N-bomb when it's time to defend PewDiePie. Hopefully now I have shown the levels of dishonesty and malice that Rags will often stoop to. So, again, how does he get away with it? Well, this whole time I've been making fun of his method of interjecting himself after every sentence, and while this is worth making fun of...
I don't know if you can hear them, but there are cicadas in the background right now, and they're so loud, I just hear them buzzing everywhere.
Yeah, I live in Arkansas. We have cicadas here too, and we solve the problem of their noise by closing the window. Yeah.
This might actually be a crucial element of his appeal. Like, think about what it looks like if you already agree with him. Instead of an annoying jackass who tediously responds to every statement in chronological order with disregard for any broader points being made, even when he has no idea what he's talking about, he's a smooth-voiced, quick-witted wordsmith who has an answer for everything his opponent is saying. Not a single claim makes it past him. He bats them all out of the air like he's a professional NBA player blocking shots. This is, in fact, a unique advantage that the response video format allows. It's like playing first in Go. When you're making a response video, you have the capability to enter a false debate where you have complete control over the pace of discussion. It's basically a given that a response video looks like an absolute destruction. Keep in mind, I'm not immune to this bias either. I'm also entering a false debate with this video you're watching right now. The responsibility lies on me alone to refrain from taking advantage of this handicap, instead of just pointing out that my opponent works for EA and is therefore a liar. As we have seen, Rags' rebuttals are often weak or dishonest, less than nothing at times. The sheer amount of circular reasoning can give you a fever if you expose yourself for too long. The important part, however, is that this makes Rags appear neutral. It makes him seem unbiased to rebut claims that society should change in some way by simply observing the way things are and attributing godlike significance to whatever forces brought us here. Well, I'm sorry to say, that's as far as you can get from being unbiased. In fact, Nebula's appeal to the status quo as unquestionable good is a pretty common trait of reactionaries. Of which, if you've been paying attention, Rags most certainly is. Rags is, among many things, a liar. He's also an intellectual coward with an unwillingness to look beyond the most surface-level interpretation of any argument, which only serves to accentuate the latent bigotry that lies like a deep smog over his entire body of work. If you happen to be a fan of his, I, for one, am genuinely thankful that you made it this far, but I also hope you keep in mind what I've said for the future. This is a new kind of propaganda. It's propaganda of false neutrality. Rags is one of these propagandists, with a moderately large audience, and I hope from now on people pay closer attention to what he and others like him are really saying, so we can spot this vile rhetoric wherever it may crop up. But most importantly, I hope that we can pay attention to what we say as well, because none of us are immune to this. This style of response video is honestly akin to some sort of drug because it feels so powerful. There is no way to not feel correct while you're doing it, but that's only because the format allows you to simply ignore any larger structural points that are being made. Now, Rags is too far gone, obviously, but if any of my lefty pals are relying on this format and feel called out right now, I'd like to say that it isn't too late. I used to be like you. It's fine. You can experiment with your structure, and soon you'll be slightly better at making content. It's cool. Good night, everybody. I hope you all have a nice rest of your careers. And now I never need to think about Rags again for the rest of my life. Good riddance.